Many teams criticise the sprint racing format, saying that not only it doesn't add anything exciting to the race weekend, but it takes away from the thrill of the drivers and doesn't allow them to properly test stuff for the race on Sunday. This has been a topic of discussion throughout the entire season, but after another mediocre Brazil GP sprint, the FIA needs to overhaul or remove the entire system, because the way this is going, it's not going good. Indicators of change for the 2024 season are emerging, as discussions are underway regarding potential adjustments to the schedule to alleviate the restrictive Parc Fermé regulations, and these regulations currently lock in car setups once Friday qualifying begins. The proposed solution is to move sprint qualifying to Friday and the sprint race to Saturday morning, creating a window between it and Saturday afternoon qualifying for any final adjustments. One of the primary criticisms from teams regarding the sprint format has been the inability to make setup changes once they are locked in. However, the possibility of a reshuffled starting order may not be a concern for many fans, but nevertheless, modifying this rule would offer teams a second opportunity, ensuring that any mistakes are genuine and not a result of an unfair challenge. Over the past 3 years, drivers, including Max Verstappen, who has expressed clear dissatisfaction with the sprint experiments, along with possibly other drivers, have started to identify other areas of concern. Many now believe the sprint format doesn't offer much beyond what is already provided by a standard Grand Prix weekend. For instance, Carlos Sainz argues that the events on Saturday, specifically the sprint race, reveal too much about what will happen on Sunday, essentially acting as a preview of the first part of the actual race. According to Sainz, this setup doesn't enhance the overall entertainment value, and he believes that the main attraction should be the Grand Prix itself. With this in mind, it's crucial to consider trying something different on Saturday. Sainz and Perez both criticise the qualifying system, noting that while it shares similarities with the Grand Prix format, the mandated tyre types and shorter time limits often lead to a race that closely mirrors events in the full Sunday event. It's no surprise that maintaining many of the same elements yields a very similar outcome. Despite some entertainment in the Brazil sprint this weekend, especially in battles for midfield spots, there is a growing feeling that the current standalone Saturday format is not delivering what it should for F1. And having failed to capture the imagination of drivers, with some wanting sprints to be got rid of completely, Horner says the way sprints work at the moment is not favoured by anybody. "I think what we have at the moment isn't quite right for the drivers, the fans, or the teams," explained Horner. "I think there needs to be more to it. We have just won a sprint race, and nobody quite knows what to do because all the focus is already on the Grand Prix. It's like you've won a long run and got a medal for it." It's becoming increasingly evident that sprint races are becoming a permanent fixture in F1, with the aim of boosting viewership and generating competition among venues vying to host them. In light of recent feedback from drivers, Stefano Domenicali's team now faces the task of brainstorming innovative ideas to make these abbreviated races more distinctive. One suggestion put forth by Sergio Perez is the implementation of reversed grids. However, the most practical way to achieve this would be to reverse the order from the Grand Prix qualifying, as drivers would likely not participate in a separate session for this purpose. This approach would create a gap in the schedule, potentially allowing for the reintroduction of a practice session to fill the void. Regardless of the method, sprint races with reversed grids have the potential to deliver more thrilling races compared to the current format, as drivers in slower cars vie for victory while faster cars work their way through the field. Horner also admits he doesn't have a preference for how sprints should be shaken up, but he was skeptical about the idea of a standalone series. "Who cares about a sprint championship?" he said. "I think that we can do a better job. I think there's an appetite, as you can see from the fans, to have a race on a Saturday. But what should it be? Should it be a reverse grid? Should it be on championship order? Should it have more points attached to it? Should there be 2 Grand Prix during the weekend rather than 1? I don't have the answer, but I know what we have today needs tuning." Since the start of sprint races, many have been advocating for the introduction of reversed grids, and this format offers smaller teams a chance to achieve results that may have been difficult to attain under the traditional system. Even though the points awarded are a small fraction of those available in the Grand Prix, a victory in a sprint race could be pivotal for a team striving to make progress in the Constructors' Championship. However, it's important to acknowledge that this format is fundamentally designed for entertainment value. While the appeal of a reversed grid lies in its potential for excitement, providing a direct means to ensure a race with numerous overtakes, it may not satisfy a segment of F1's fanbase that already feels the championship is too focused on the spectacle. If reversed grids fail to gain popularity, another option could be a return to one-shot qualifying. For younger viewers unfamiliar with this format, it was used from 2003 to 2005. wherein each driver had the track to themselves and one opportunity to set a qualifying lap that determined the grid. Given that the final part of sprint qualifying already limits drivers to a single set of soft tyres, it essentially operates as a one-chance format. Formalising this approach would give less prominent teams undivided attention during a session. Rather than have a session to decide the order of the qualifying session, which seemed like an overcomplication and open to manipulation, Michael Schumacher once deliberately tanked his initial qualifying lap to get a more favourable place in the order, as rain was due to arrive in the second part of qualifying. The free practice order could be used instead. With the sole practice session already valuable given, it becomes the sole opportunity to make changes based on gathered data. It adds an extra element of needing to actually perform a solid lap. Of course, the key flaw of one-shot qualifying is that the field does not get equal conditions to do their lap. The driver who starts first, likely to be the driver who finished last in practice, will encounter the circuit at its least grippy. Conversely, the top driver in practice will generally get the best conditions. Inclement weather can derail that and offer some degree of variation, but the fact that all drivers cannot run on track at the same time develops inequality. But if sprint races are still in the experimental phase, then there's surely some latitude to get really left field with sprint qualifying. Why not trial something completely different? Formula E has shown that qualifying experimentation can offer a genuinely enthralling solution that hasn't been done before, and its dual format has made qualifying as much of an event as the race. This isn't a call for F1 to simply lift the format from its electric-powered counterpart, but rather to channel a similar level of creativity. In my opinion, a good thing would be to leave sprint races in the same place as aggregate qualifying and racing at Sochi. The bin. The races at Interlagos have almost always been good, but many of the experiments at different venues this year haven't been particularly stunning. Qatar being the exception to that, as the nature of the circuit seemed to suit the sprint event. That's not to say that the alternative of 3 practice sessions is any better. A 2-day weekend with 1 practice session, qualifying, and the race would be a perfect antidote to the calendars becoming increasingly massive. But F1 is inclined towards more track time, not less. Selling out a Friday is a lucrative revenue stream, and the importance of holding a session on that day with some degree of jeopardy and meaning is certainly important. At the recent United States Grand Prix, which was also a sprint event, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were disqualified from the race after they failed post-race technical checks. With the plank worn below the 1mm allowance, they were thrown out of the results and blamed the lack of practice time given to teams during the weekend to properly set up their cars. Verstappen, who has long been a critic of the sprint format, has asserted that such issues wouldn't occur if F1 stuck to its traditional schedule. "We should just get rid of the sprint weekend and then everyone can just set up their cars normally," Verstappen told the media. "It wouldn't have happened that we would have had a normal race weekend. These things only happen when you have a sprint weekend where everything is so rushed into, you're in between FP1 and qualifying. From our side, I think we went a bit too conservative, but that's still better than the other way." With words like this coming from a driver like Verstappen, it's evident that F1 needs to completely overhaul the sprint format, and they have time to do that during the off-season in order to improve it drastically if it's here to stay. It all comes down to one simple thing. If the sprint experiment is to continue, then F1 needs to go big or go home. What do you think about the sprint race? Should it stay or be completely scrapped? Let us know your opinion in the comments below.